Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we're going to be talking about entering the federal supply chain, or as I like to call it, how to boldly go where emerging and non-traditional businesses haven't gone before yet. So thanks so much for joining us. Again, we are thrilled to have you. My name is Rick. They call me Rick-O, as in, oh my goodness, how on earth do you pronounce that last name? And I remind everybody, nobody ever pronounces my last name wrong, because however you pronounce it is what I say is right. But for those who are truly curious, it's Ostapovich, as in hasta la vista Maury Povich, first, last, you're good. I am your guide for today's federal contracting adventure. And joining me is Jay Davis. Jay is business counselor at MoveAmerica's Apex Accelerator in Dearborn, Michigan. Jay's the guy with the map, the flashlight, and probably some snacks for the journey. So, Jay, why don't you kick us off and give us a little preview of what we're going to cover, and also tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. We can just kind of get in touch with this. Hold on, just getting my notes up here. All right. We will be kind of touching on the milestones in entering government contracting, the role of Apex accelerators, and guiding businesses in that process, and really just review the steps in registration, bidding, winning, and managing federal contracts. A little bit about myself, exactly like Rick. A lot of people have difficulty pronouncing my first name. I am, though, J. Leon Davis. But I kind of go by Jay Davis for short, just to save people the embarrassment. It's okay if you call me either one. Just go by Jay, though. Of course, we'll just be introducing the ethic of government contracting. A lot of folk have been in business to business and are looking to make that transition. So we'll talk about the Apex Accelerator's role in doing so. Like I said, how to register your business, how to find contracts. We'll speak to the compliance piece, how to actually contract, post-award management, and resources to support those efforts. I know we're kind of looking at this throughout the country, so we'll get you in touch with your local Apex and then kind of open it up for questions and answers.
Yep, because that is something I do want to remind everybody. Jay does work for our Apex Accelerator in Dearborn, Michigan, but we know that we've got folks from all over the country. We will always make sure that we put you in touch with your local Apex. But Jay, thanks so much for joining us, and I'm glad that you told everybody how to pronounce your first name, because I was making a little note myself, just for the future. But thankfully, you do allow me to call you Jay.
Absolutely, my friend. Honestly, I was thinking the same thing about your last name, Ostapovich. Now you know.
Yeah, I always look at it this way. Just don't call me late for dinner, right? So
exactly
now, yeah, exactly. So before we get into all the Sams, the Cages, the Nakeses, I mean, it's like this whole secret agent alphabet soup that we're going to be talking about today, right? Now, let's go ahead and start with, again, who we are and how we can help. So, Jay, what I'm going to ask you to do is give us your best elevator pitch here. Tell the folks about MoveAmerica and our Apex and what this thing is all about. What exactly is an Apex Accelerator, and how do you guys help emerging businesses level up?
Absolutely that. So MoveAmerica is a behemoth. We've had our fearless leader, Mr. Earl Wyatt, on your podcast last, and some of the other top brass that runs MoveAmerica. It is indeed a 501c3 that's geared toward national security, has multiple efforts in doing that, research and development, supply chain, industrial development, consortium development. And in the context of the Apex Accelerator, we really do help or kind of do a bit of hand-holding for small businesses that are just getting into the federal contracting space. We do help, like mentioned, like with registration on sam.gov. We help with the marketing piece to kind of showcase your core capabilities to the specific department that you have the ability to service or create products for. We really bridge the gap with networking opportunities, town halls, and really just connecting government with the commercial market.
Fantastic, and we appreciate you giving us that whole big picture as far as things go. A couple of housekeeping things before we move on along. Just want to remind everybody that your microphones are muted and your cameras are off. As much as we would love to either hear you arguing with a growling dog or, thanking the UPS driver for your Amazon order, because a lot of us do work from home these days, we just go ahead and mute that. So if you'd like to ask a question at any time throughout the webinar, go ahead and use the Q&A panel. Just look for Q&A up top in your Teams window, and you can go ahead and type a question in there. I have a great colleague of mine, Meg Pace, who I'll introduce a little bit later. She's going to be moderating the questions, so Meg is going to be on board with all of that. Want to let everybody know that we are recording this webinar. Now, again, your microphones are muted, your cameras are off. The only thing people are going to see is your name, and hopefully you're using a name that isn't like, Beyonce fan 1023 or something like that. But even if you are, just know that this is a recorded webinar. If you do ask a question later, we may mention your name unless you tell us specifically not to do that. But if there is anybody who is uncomfortable being part of a recorded webinar, and because MoveAmerica is based in Maryland, which is a two-party consent state, I have to give you the opportunity to opt out right now. So if you are not comfortable being part of a recorded webinar, again, we're not going to hear your voice. We're not going to see your face. All we see is the name on the screen. But if you are uncomfortable being part of that, I'm going to give you the opportunity to drop off now. Going to give you the magic 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, now you said you're going to stay on, so thank you very much for joining us. So, again, we really do appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all about the stuff that we're going to talk to you today. So, one of the things I really want to focus on is, like the key services that we're offering, right? Now, Jay, we know that you're the Obi-Wan to our business Jedis out there. Let's talk about the tools in your utility belt, or should I say your client toolbox. So what kind of support are businesses actually getting when they come to an Apex Accelerator?
Absolutely that. So the introduction, first of all, into defense contracting specifically. If there is a commercial product that an individual manufacturer has, um, even I would say up to stage 2 in business, I would say they are prime to either look at some government opportunities or to get the certification or compliance that would allow them to do so. So we kind of help bridge the gap there. Like we said, let them know where the procurement opportunities are. So we do, of course, support the federal opportunities, all departments of state, not just the Department of Defense. We also support with state opportunities as well as local. So kind of going after the opportunity, you have to know where they are. So with the federal government, sam.gov is exactly where all procurement opportunities are going to be with. So whether you're working with the Army, Navy, Marines, whether you're working with the Department of Justice, Small Business Administration, in which case the context to provide goods or services, all of those solicitations are going to be on sam.gov at the federal space. On the state, specifically here in the state of Michigan, we do have the Sigma portal, Sigma VSS, in which case any procurement opportunities in the state of Michigan, it'll be posted there along with documents needed for compliance and for proposal development. Also, there is opportunities for support at the city or the local level. The city of Detroit off of hand, which is the largest procurer in the state of Michigan, and about 15 minutes west of where our home office is in Dearborn. They procure about $1.2 billion in goods and services. Their platform is called Oracle. So telling them where those opportunities are, walking them through the registration process, and then the compliance piece for any certifications, any clearances that they need, we'd also make sure that they have them as well. So if you're just first coming into the federal contracting space, most likely you don't have the fundamental pieces like your UEI, like your cage code, in which case we would help walk you through, get those things. The UEI replacing the DUN number or the Universal Entity Identifier. It's your specific code to your specific business. So if, for example, there is a mortgage brokerage called JD Financial, off the top of my head, there is a number to identify that. Or if Rick's has Rick's Sporting Goods, it sounds like a really good name, Rick. I don't know, you might have to get into that. He would have a UEI to identify his business and so on. The NAICS codes and cage codes are a little bit different. Your North American Industry Classification System code helps identify the industry that you're in. Let's just say that you're specifically in construction. Let's just say that you are in artificial development. The industry that you're speaking to provide services or goods for, that is your NAICS code, in which case we would help identify that for you. And then your cage code for the specific product or service that you're offering. So your commercial and government entity code. So we help businesses that are just entering the federal contracting space first get those pieces and then help coach them through the next pieces with getting compliant and kind of position it well for government contracting.
All right, so now we're really getting into the nitty gritty, right? Because this really is the you must be this tall to ride the ride part. Because we want to make sure that people understand getting registered is what you need to do so you can even start to think about bidding on government contracts, right?
Exactly. Exactly. That is where all the opportunities are. You have to be on that platform, sam.gov, and it can be a bit comprehensive. Some people I know have been trying to register for weeks. With a business counselor from an Apex Accelerator, it'll take about an hour and a half, in which case it's a two-step process for entity validation with your local municipality, and then, of course, more supplemental information about some of the goods and services that you provide.
Now, let me just ask, what are some of the common hangups or mistakes that businesses hit when they're trying to register, whether again it's for sam.gov or for getting your cage code or getting your
Yeah.
NAICS classification? What are you seeing when you're helping out these businesses?
So there's a technical piece. Sam.gov has just went through a huge makeover quite recently. When I say recently, I mean within the last week. So the way that Sam was set up, how it was structured up until last week looks completely different. For me, it's a bit more navigable. Contract opportunities are easier to find, and you're able to kind of filter the type of opportunities there a little bit more seamlessly. So I like it, but if anyone's working on the old system, then you might come out and say, hey, this is new. Indeed, it is. Things do change even with administration. So the common hangups with doing that is just navigating the technology. Some people are kind of old school, so getting in front of a computer that's kind of mandating a lot of information from an individual can be cumbersome. Another thing that we see is just they don't understand some of the terminology, like a labor surplus area. What does that mean? Is that applicable to me? In which case you would need an Apex Accelerator counselor just to speak to, how to, kind of bridge that gap there, know what it means, and then know if it's applicable to your company, if it's not.
No, and that's fantastic because I think that's really the thing is a lot of people don't understand just exactly what's incorporated in all this, what's involved in all this, what kind of time it takes. And so that's really something that you can help out with. And then when you're talking again about finding and bidding on contracts, once a business gets registered, that's when it's time to I like to liken it to hitting the government contract dating app, right? So you go to
I love that.
sam.gov. And of course, when they're doing that, we want them to swipe right on contracts, not on people. It's not about that, but again, we want to make sure that the businesses actually go about finding opportunities. So how do they do that once you get to sam.gov? And more importantly, once you find them, how do you actually bid on them?
Absolutely, that the dating pool for government contracting it's expansive. Get on in there. There's just multiple ways to find those opportunities. You want to make sure that you're looking at relevant opportunities. So there are two ways that you would go about doing this. So first, drink from the fountain approach. Of course, you can jump into sam.gov and filter. Once you go in, tap on the contract panel, and then on the left side, you could look at the place of performance to know if the opportunity is near to where you could actually provide the services. You could take a look at specific set asides, like the classification. If there is a woman-owned business, if there is a service-disabled veteran-owned business, and you have the certifications there, you can actually filter those opportunities to see the set asides that are specific to that specific certification. Again, place of performance, the specific certification that you have, and then potentially the department that you want to work for or with. The defense budget is quite extensive. And so if you have a commercial product and are looking to commercialize, a great client to have, if that is indeed your goal. But you could also look at working with, like I said, the Department of Justice, the SBA, go where the opportunities are, the General Service Administration, and you can filter based on department. So depending on what you kind of provide as a service, and you can kind of get this guidance from one of your counselors, working with Move America, of course, you'd be able to learn a little bit about how to work through those filtered processes.
No, and that's fantastic. And you know, a lot of people don't realize that it's about finding the right fit, right? It's kind of like when you're looking for a job, which we at Move America never do because we always say if you find a job that you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And I don't believe I've worked since I started, working at Move America. Um, Although my timesheet would say differently, but
Indeed.
it really is something that I love to do. But it's about finding that fit. And when you're looking at these opportunities and you're deciding, okay, do I want to bid on it? Do I want to bid on it? This is one of those times where it's really better to focus in using, the laser scope rather than the scattergun effect, right? I mean, you don't say, well, I think I can do that. Or yeah, I'm pretty sure we could eventually ramp up and do that. I'm going to go ahead and bid on this contract. You want to make sure that you're bidding on something that you can actually do, right?
Exactly that. Really looking at your past performance to say, have I, accepted a contract or done this level of service before? If not, then it's probably not a good opportunity for you. For example, we have a ton of construction projects around the city of Detroit and a lot of vendors doing that. If you've been doing $2 million projects in construction, of course, it's admirable to go after that 20 million, 50, $100 million project, but you would first look to see, have I done anything with similar scope, similar size? Do they have the capacity, the capability to provide services on time within the schedule of delivery? Is it feasible for me? Do I have the resources to make it happen? So exactly like Rick was saying, we are want to be strategic about the opportunities that you go after, because at the end of the day, you want to be able to deliver those services, get your invoicing in, and get paid on time.
And then when it comes to, again, putting together a good proposal, I mean, I'm sure you've had some horror stories come across your desk that people think people think they're putting together a good proposal, and it's one of those things where this isn't subjective, right? It's not, oh, I wrote a lot, so they should they should really enjoy reading this, or I decided to include some pop culture references. It's not anything like that, right? I mean, you really need to be, again, strategic about how you put this proposal together.
Exactly that. You are going to want to dot your I's and cross your T's. What really determines if a proposal is accepted or rejected is within the details. So some things I would look out for is to make sure that you have, when going after a contract, that you would have adequate financial resources, the ability to comply or deliver the perform within the performance schedule. So if there is a project that needs to be completed within 60 or 90 days, that you have the means, the ability to make sure that you're within that 60 or 90 days. Make sure that you have satisfactory records or integrity in your business ethics and in your business policies. So, of course, we want to make sure that we're always doing the right thing, but making sure everything is by the book, obviously, as a business owner, is your responsibility. And making sure that you have, I would just say, the network or the support that you need in order to research the opportunity well, and then be able to execute.
Yeah, because I mean, again, it really is about making sure that you're playing by the rules. And, if you find a contract and you bid on it and the government says yes, you're the bachelor or the bachelorette and you got that rose. It's a wonderful thing to get there, but you've got to be ready to get down on one knee at the end of that show, right? Uh, Not that I watch it. I actually try to avoid it like the plague. But again, when it comes to government contracts, I'll liken it to something else like the Olympics. There's just no cutting corners because they will catch you eventually. And so, whether it's, again, making sure that you're able to perform, making sure that you're following the rules, the certifications, it's all that ethical stuff, right?
Exactly that. And that's exactly why you have the business counselors to help guide you through that.
And then, I mean, really, when it comes to certifications, right? So we'll talk about the different types of certifications. You've got, Hub Zone, you've got 8A, you've got WOSB. I mean, these are all really, big certifications, and there again are requirements for all of that.
Exactly that. There are requirements, there are application. In some instances, there are fees that you would need to pay in order to get your application reviewed and to get the certification that you're going after. We have really great relationships with Move America and the certifying body. The SBA, of course, is responsible for the 8A program, for HubZone, for WASB. They kind of house all of that in-house. So we would be able to walk you through the application process, make sure, and this is a shameless plug, the Apex Accelerator will be hosting or co-hosting a webinar tomorrow in partnership with the SBA. We will be reviewing the 8A program. So if you have any availability from 10 to noon, make it, if you could drop that link in the chat, that would be awesome for registration for sure. We'll be joining with the State District Director, Lakita Henderson. We'll be getting insights for how the SBA is expanding their role in supporting certification. They just launched their brand new site. It's really seamless. You used to kind of have to go through different sites for different certifications. Back in October, they went ahead and got a facelift, and now the opportunity to apply is seamless for multiple certifications. But those are quite crucial to the types of set-asides that are available. The intention behind creating them was to create more opportunities for a diverse business sector. I like that instead of saying how we were going to describe that before. So we're getting better, Rick. We're getting better.
We are definitely getting better. And listen, we are all about shameless plugs here. So I'm going to put a 1-900 number up on the screen a little bit later to order my latest CD.
Okay.
Sorry, I just took a bunch of people back in time, and then there are other people. It's like I just shot a joke at them in the Matrix. But again, yeah, exactly. What's a 1-900 number? Yeah, we're going back to the 90s there. I'm sorry. I had to take that trip back. But speaking about taking trips, when you take a trip, you typically like to go far. You like that little bridge? That was a stretch. I'm sorry.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, you do. And hopefully everybody else is following along. But again, when you're talking about FAR in this instance, you're talking about the Federal Acquisition Regulation. Why is that important? Why is that critical?
Absolutely. So the FAR, just a behemoth piece of regulation that covers all aspects of procurement in the country. It was really intimidating approaching it, but everything that you would need to do, every form that you would complete, it would be included within that federal acquisition regulation. It is honestly before our very eyes being changed right now with a couple of executive orders that were set forth by this administration at the top of the year. So a lot of those things are changing. However, the way to procure is quite set in stone. It kind of helps make things a little bit more easier for identifying opportunities, making sure that you are compliant, and then just getting your services out there.
And then one thing I did want to ask you about, because this is something we touched on in one of our previous sessions when we were talking about FOCI, and it's about, again, the ethics. And it's about being transparent, and it's about being upfront. So I really feel like it's something that we need to make sure that we're mentioning here, because when we were talking to Dr. Christoph McCrae, he mentioned when you're talking about going after government contracts, this is not the situation where you want to say, well, it is better to ask forgiveness than permission. It's really one of those things where you need to be upfront about everything, because if it disqualifies you from a contract, you want to know that at the beginning of the process, not at the end, because that could have some serious ramifications, right?
Exactly that. And it really is to keep the individual business safe. So anywhere between planning, development to distribution, there is some bad actors that is going to want to get your client data. So standards and guides were put in place to make sure that sensitive personal client data is inaccessible. So not only are we looking at, of course, the safety of the individual client, but to make sure that your business isn't compromised in any way either. I mean, it really only takes one or two times for any compromises to systems to be obvious, in which case a department doesn't necessarily want to work with you because they think you're a risk or a liability. So it is to make sure that you guys are safe, make sure that you're compliant.
Yeah, and it really is about, again, being upfront and being as transparent as possible. If there's ever anything that you feel that could be a red flag when you're about to bid on a government contract, to put in a proposal on it, put yourself out there and put your name in the hat, as we like to say. It's one of those things where the folks at the Apex accelerators like Jay can definitely help you. The folks at Move America can definitely help you because we've been on that side of the equation as well. We have people who were in government procurement, we have people who were in contracting, and they know if something is going to be a problem. So you can bring it up to us. It's kind of like the doctor patient or attorney client privilege. We'll keep things between us. You don't have to worry that it's going to go any farther than that, but we're going to let you know if there's going to be a potential problem because we want to help you solve it before it becomes a real problem down the road. Because I've heard of horror stories of contractors who kept some information and then ended up, getting fined, and they got fined more than they made on the contract. That's a money losing proposition.
Exactly that. And I would say the even bigger opportunity with working with Move America is those people that not only just worked in these procurement offices but served. So they have firsthand experience of both the great opportunities there and essentially how to avoid um, kind of messing the bed. So definitely do the right thing. Work with Move America. Work with your local Apex Accelerator.
Yeah, we don't want anybody to make a mess anywhere, especially not the bed. Um, so, fun fact, the US government is actually the world's biggest buyer. I would have thought Amazon. So it's kind of like Amazon, but with FAR clauses, right? So let's talk a little bit about where the opportunities are. What kind of contracts are out there for the businesses, that again are less experienced? They're emerging. We like to use anything but a word that, translated into Spanish is poquito. We try to say anything but that. But these businesses that again are not that experienced, are there easier ones to get started with than others?
There are definitely easier ways and means to get, I would say, federal contracts, and not really just federal, but local too. So I always advise the client to say, hey, if you could build momentum, build notoriety, marketability of your business, working with your localities, working with your counties, working with your state, then it is a natural progression for you to start working with the federal government. But let's take a look at the opportunities that are out there right now, just kind of breaking down the types of solicitations that you'll see. Of course, you have your sources, SALT, or your request for information. Now, these aren't necessarily contracts, but the government is looking for information for either how to price an opportunity, looking for to see who are the subject matter experts in a specific region or area. And the information that you provide could very well make an opportunity for you, opportunities to sole source contracts, in which case a specific vendor having no competition would be awarded that opportunity. So you can take a look at that. You also have RFPs, your RFQs, requests for the proposal or the request for quote, in which case you are giving information to the United States government for a good or service they want to purchase or they want to acquiesce from a local supplier. In that, you do have the three types of contracts that are listed on the slide here. Your firm fixed price, in which case the government says we are going to spend $26,000 to have this particular project shored up. In which case you don't necessarily have to guess. All of the work is done for you. You really just have to let them know what your numbers are to provide the good or the service. You have the cost reimbursement model, in which case you would go ahead and pay for all of the goods and services that need to be supplied, and then you would submit your invoices to be paid out through the procurement portal time, and then time and materials exactly closer to the first. But it requires the contractor to pay the money spent on the material, and then usually within the hourly rate and markup, of course, for the completion of the project. So those are just a little bit of the breakdown of what it would look like for the different types of opportunities out there.
Yeah, and again, it's all about making sure that you're a perfect fit. You want to make sure that the project is a perfect fit for your company. You want to make sure that your company is the perfect fit for the project. And this is again where I think there's a big pitfall because you get a lot of companies that they want to get their foot in the door, right? They want to start building that resume. And so they end up taking a contract that they underbid. They'll go for a firm fixed price because they're like, well, yeah, if everything goes well and all the planets align and all the stars align, we'll only lose 20% on that contract, but at least we'll have accomplished one, and then we'll be able to go forward. I mean, that's not something you want to do with your business. That's something
Yeah.
I'm sure you would definitely argue against.
Heard one terrible horror story similar to that. I was talking to one of the deputy administrators for the U.S. ACE, or the Army Corps of Engineers, in which case there was a local supplier who was going after a contract the first time within federal contracting, in which case they said, "Well, go after the project. We should be able to complete it for $1 million." It's the most that they've bid on a specific project, so they're pretty proud of themselves. And of course, that was the lowest bid that was put in there, so that was the bid that was accepted. Later, she found out that the earmark for the project was for about 20 million. So, at which case, you left $19 million of opportunity right there on the table. So, of course, you are the subject matter expert for your industry. So, you would know how much it costs to get the job done. We don't necessarily at any point want to overcharge our government, because at the end of the day, they provide those services in lieu of its citizens. So at the same time, you do want to do well to look at the scope of work, to look at the project price, the performance as well, to see what timetables are looking like in order for you to complete the project. So look well into each contract. It is indeed just that, a contract. So I'm not saying that you guys need to be legal experts, but you should have some close.
And that's always something that we're going to tell people. You can ask questions when you're looking at an opportunity. There's always the chance to ask the contracting officer, or ask the procurement person, or ask the agency that is, looking to bring the contract to life. There's the ability to ask them questions. I think that's what a lot of people don't do. They always think, well, I don't want to ask a question because it's a dumb question.
Right.
But the only dumb questions are the ones you don't ask.
Exactly. So I would just say to look well to see if there's a pre-bid conference, in which case the solicitation will be reviewed. You have the opportunity to submit your questions, and then the deadline is given during that conference for a response. So I would just say to look through that well. Those opportunities are still out there, though.
Definitely. All right. So once a business has won the contract, that's when they get the confetti ready. But, you really can't have a party unless you can actually manage the timeline, stay on budget, and, oh, by the way, yeah, eventually get paid. Because I think that's one of the things that a lot of companies feel. They're going to get this contract, and then they're going to get a check, and then they're going to perform the work. But that's not the way it works, right? I mean, at least not anywhere that I've ever seen a contract. Nobody ever gets paid ahead of time. So, what should these businesses be prepared for after they've been awarded a contract?
My mind, this is kind of where the real work starts. I mean, of course, you have the administrative piece with actually bidding and going after the contract. But now, of course, you can pop those champagne bottles, but you have to get those goods and services out. You have to make sure that you're getting the invoices. Well, first, that you're set up on the invoice platform Pi. I'm sorry, I forget the breakdown. Hold on, the procurement integrated enterprise environment, in which case you'd be able to submit your bids, excuse me, your invoices on time and make sure that you're paid. So, like I mentioned before, you're going to want to make sure that if there is a set time or date that you need to get your materials to a site, if there's a site visit that you need to go ahead and have as a mandatory part of the contract, then I would just say getting a team together who's responsible for the procurement process, whether it be to review the solicitation opportunities, whether it's to make sure that you have specific certifications, to make sure that these things are executed in a timely manner. Make sure that you have a team that's able to support the entire process. Appoint an individual if you need to. Of course, work with your Apex Accelerator just to make sure that you have platform access. But again, you can't go at this by yourself. You're going to want to make sure that you have that administrator, that individual who's responsible for reviewing all this information, and then, of course, following up with us to make sure that you have platform access.
No, and that's fantastic. And the big thing is it's always you've got some common pitfalls that you make when you're when you've been awarded a contract. Again, you don't have the manpower for the contract. I've seen that a couple of times where a contractor came in, won a contract, but didn't have the people to perform the work in the time allotted, because it's not, you have to have everybody on board 100% when you're bidding, but you do have a time frame. Within the first 60 days you're going to be up to 85% staffing or something like that. What are some of the other common mistakes that you're seeing with some of these companies that, again, whether it's federal, whether it's state, whether it's local, government contracting is this whole weird animal, because the government just does things their own way, and local does different than state, and state does different than federal, and federal agencies do different things than other federal agencies. So what are some of the ones that you've seen throughout the years?
Really just people missing the opportunity to ask questions that are relevant to the bid. I mentioned requirements for site visits and construction progress, uh, projects. Sometimes people miss those conferences. They miss the opportunity to ask those questions, and then because they haven't, participated in things like that, then they forego the opportunity. So really, just knowing where the opportunities are, I would say, is a big issue. Um, Believe it or not, the place of performance is another issue too, where a person could be going after a contract after they win. They really see that they don't have the ability or the means to transport or ship goods to the site, to the forward operating base. So just really paying attention to the minutia of each contract, I would say, is pretty common. And those are the two I can think of at the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Man, I got to tell you that you're bringing back horror stories for me, because I'm remembering a couple of years ago, I decided I was going to buy this really cool robotic lawnmower thing. It was like controlled with a drone remote control, and so you had these treads on it where it could get places in my yard that if I tried to do it with my standing mower, I'd fall over. And it was the coolest thing ever, but it got shipped from overseas, and I had absolutely no idea. I thought, oh, I paid whatever I paid for, and it was getting shipped, and it was going to get sent to my house. Oh no, it sat in the port, and then I had to contact a logistics company that had to go to the port and get it. And then after they got it, then I had to contact a transporting company that had to drive it to my house. And then I had no idea how to operate the thing. So I had to find somebody else who could do that. So it really is about knowing all of those, like you said, the I's to dot, the T's to cross, what exactly is necessary. And again, that's really something where Move America and the Apex accelerators can help, because our folks know these contracts inside and out. They've responded to them, they've written them, they've gone and fulfilled them. And it's one of those things where we're going to help you understand what you need to do before you have to do it. So I'm sure you get a lot of people that call on you for that type of expertise, Jay.
Exactly that. And I'll put some nuance on it. By no means does Move America's Apex Accelerator prepare the proposal for you, but we will of course review the scope of work. We'll let you know what documentation that that will need to be submitted. If there's any clearances associated with it, we'll make sure that you have the information. I mean, these things are time sensitive though. So as soon as you see an opportunity that you are wanting to aggressively go after, make sure you shoot me an email. Go ahead and shoot me a text or call. And then we can go over that opportunity, schedule a one-on-one counseling session, and then see if it's right for you.
And that is, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because we do get a lot of people that do that in a lot of the different areas, and even our colleagues over at Project Spectrum, where they have people that have to write security system plans for cybersecurity, and they're like, okay, so here's everything, write my SSP for me. We don't do that, and I'm gonna strongly suggest against anybody who's going to pay somebody else to write something for you. It's like paying someone to write a romantic letter to a potential partner. You don't want to do that because
So I
you're going
might
to have
provide
to
a
live up for
little
that.
bit of, I'll provide a little bit of context for that, and that's why it's really good to work with Move America. There are great government sponsored organizations in which case they can provide technical assistance preparing proposals. I know about 2 weeks back we hosted the Office of Defense, Aerospace, and Innovation Roundtable, in which case we had JETCO participate. I would say a sister organization who indeed helps with proposal preparation, and have great insights for actually writing that for you. So get with us. We'll point you in the right direction.
Now, I'm really glad that you brought that up because, that brings us to the area where we're going to talk about resources and support. Because trust me, if you're on this webinar and your head's spinning right now, don't worry. This isn't a one and done kind of thing. We've given you these slides and we've given you this information, and now good luck. We're here. Support is available long after this ends. Support is available going down the road. So again, when you're talking about that type of support resources that are ongoing, we've got a bunch of different areas that people could tap into.
Absolutely, that working with us is paramount, because if there's something or a subject matter expert, I would say, that is local, that's closer to you than we are, then we'd be able to get that over to you. What comes to mind is SIBR support for businesses in critical and emerging technologies. There is funding, that is available for you guys, in which case our friends at BBC ETC would be able to help write that proposal for you and provide technical assistance guiding you through that process. As I mentioned, Jetco, an awesome connection to our center, in which case they help you with completing RFQs and RFPs. Being really pointed in the right direction is exactly what we do best. If not, we are counseling you on how to walk through those first few proposals. We're also helping you through the certification, and it really just broadening your network for defense opportunities specifically, but for contract opportunities as a whole.
Yeah, and there's one thing I definitely want to try to warn people about, especially when it comes to the less experienced businesses, because AI is a wonderful thing. I use it for different things. Everybody uses it for different things these days. If you think you're going to chat GPT a proposal by loading in the document and then telling chat GPT to go ahead and write your proposal for you, it might do it, but it's going to say a lot of stuff that you probably don't do, because it's going to come up with ideas and strategies and tasks and products and services that your company is not equipped to provide, because it's doing it from a large language model. That's a lot of people, again, they think they're going to hit that easy button. It's one thing to take a proposal that you've written and run it through ChatGPT and say, hey, am I meeting the parameters? That's a good thing to use it for. But having it write the proposal for you, that's definitely something that would be bad mojo.
Exactly that. It can create a narrative. It doesn't say if that narrative is true or not. So be mindful of using AI or any platform to help with your proposals. Certain departments won't even allow or look at a proposal if it is found that you are using any sort of AI. So let's take our time. You don't want to be careless. You don't want to go into this blinded. So work with your local business counselor, work with your local Apex Accelerator, and of course, work with MoveAmerica, so we can guide you through those hurdles.
Definitely. And that's the big thing, because particularly working with counselors and working with MoveAmerica, one of the big things that we look to do is keep current with any updates that are happening with acquisition, whether it's federal, whether it's state, whether it's local, because things change. Things change at a moment's notice, and the government publishes stuff places that other people may not know to look. So you have no idea when something changes, when a definition changes, the definition of a small business, or a definition of a disadvantaged business, or a definition of a woman-owned business could end up changing somewhere down the line. There are conversations like that all the time. So we want to make sure that the latest stuff, and that's where our experts come in to help.
Exactly that. You can, of course, still take a look at that federal acquisition regulation, look at acquisition.gov, in which case regularly updated to keep you informed of what's regulatory, what's speculative. As Rick mentioned, there are changes coming. As I said, presently, even with this current administration, with the executive orders that are coming out. So a lot of those rules are changing. A lot of those regulations are actually being pulled back. In two of the most recent executive orders, you had the 10-1 rule, in which case any new acquisition regulation that comes out, 10 are repealed. And then the second one included a sunset clause, in which case after 4 years, there's no reason for the provision, it'll be removed. So it's good to stay on top of that, to stay compliant. definitely seek out legal assistance and help. It'll make sure that you could avoid a lot of potholes. But that's exactly what you have us for. We'll help you guide along the way.
All right. So the $1 million question, or maybe we should say the multi-million-dollar contract question, is, are you ready to jump in this world? So we want to make sure that anybody who's tuning in today, what should their very next step be, Jay?
Reach out. No, I'm kidding. There is a quick intake form that you would need to get completed with the Apex Accelerator so we can process you if you're local. If you're not local to Southeast Michigan, then I would say go ahead and jump onto www.napex.usa to find out your local Apex Accelerator. Go ahead and connect to your counselor there. Paint the vision for what you're trying to go after, and then go after it.
Excellent.
If you're looking,
Excellent.
if you are local though, I do want to drop my number in the chat, 313-452-6960. I'd love to connect with you guys even offline to see how we can support.
Yeah, and again, it's all about that one-on-one service, and that's really what we tried to provide. So again, if you're in Jay's area, we definitely want that to happen. So we'll go ahead and put that in the Q&A panel. Now, speaking of Q&A, I think we've now hit the time for Q&A, which means we're going to turn things over to the real powerhouse behind the scenes. Now, she's part question curator, part mythbuster, and part eagle-eyed Teams chat ninja. So please welcome my colleague, the always on point, always one step ahead, and the only person who can make government procurement questions sound fun, Meg Pace. Meg has been collecting your questions like rare Pokemon all session long, and now she's ready to toss them at Jay rapid fire style, but with love. So, Meg, I'm going to turn
Let's
it over to
go.
you.
Great. So I did see a question come in about Jay's number. I listed it in the webinar on the, I'm sorry, the webinar out tomorrow. I listed your phone number underneath.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Uh-huh. So our first question, does performance reporting apply to every contract?
Say that again.
Does performance reporting apply to every contract?
For most of them, I would say that there is. Maybe if it's not for your localities or something like that, then most likely not. But they're going to want to see a past performance there and a track record of doing so.
Great. And Rick, we will be providing these slides to attendees afterwards, correct?
Yes, we will.
Great. So the next question, Jay, what is the biggest myth about government contracting?
That it's hard. I would just say, obviously, it's a bit more meticulous with reading a lot of the documentation, but it's huge wins. It's huge wins there. And a lot of the sentiment that the contracting officers were kind of relaying was that not enough people are bidding on this. So I would say that's the second myth, that there's just not enough opportunity out there. So many more people see what are the compliance measures, what certifications that they need, and they kind of throw their hands up to say that they can't do it. And I said, well, no, you just need to be guided through that process. There are templates and formats that are available that we can get over to you. But it's not hard. It just requires you to lean in a little bit, focus a little bit, plenty of opportunity out there.
Awesome. Thank you. Can Canadian companies and individuals bid on U.S. contracts, and what are the requirements?
That is a good question.
I mean, you see that in your area, don't you, Jay? Because you're right on the Canadian border.
Yeah, about 25% of Ontario's goods come through Detroit, about 113 billion in procurement annually. But to be honest, I hadn't thought that through, to be transparent with you. Hadn't thought it through. So I'm going to put that in my back pocket, and I'm going to circle back. There is the International Relations Administration, in which case we could identify opportunities for us. But that compliance piece is what I'd have to look for to see what would be different, I would say, being a non-citizen.
And then I also think one of the other things that we could say about this is it's going to depend on the contract, right? Because there are going to be some contracts, again, there are going to be qualifications that are going to be met. And some contracts utilize funding sources from, say, congressional bills, where the congressional bills have written directly into the language it has to be a US based company. Because we have seen that, like a lot of times with the Department of Defense, we have seen where the company must be based, must be headquartered in the United States. So every contract is going to be different. And I would say, again, it's really going to be a matter of that contract. But I think Canadian companies can definitely still look to get into the U.S. procurement market when it comes to whether it's state, whether it's local, whether it's federal, especially if you're, in a Canadian city or a Canadian area that borders on the United States. There are going to be opportunities across that border, because I know there are also other types of opportunities that have gone the other way, where U.S. companies or U.S. agencies have done things over on the Canadian side of things. So we want to make sure that we're keeping everything, keeping all those relations above board, because we want to be friends with everybody.
Exactly that, including our friends up north.
Is this just for manufacturers, or can service providers get involved too?
No, no, there is a need for services as well. So, depending on what you're selling, like mentioned, the government is the largest procurer in the world, really. So, we can take a look to see what your capabilities are and try and play matchmaker with where those opportunities could be.
Great, and actually, the perfect segue to the next question. Can I get help with creating a capability statement from an Apex accelerator?
Exactly that. That is the marketing piece. We will help you with narrating your company, identifying what those core capabilities are. We'll help you with, speaking to what your past performance is, making sure that the relevant NAICS codes and CAGE codes are there and present before you. Of course, we'll leave all of the good graphics to you, but we can provide templates and guidance with how to market to the government, not only just creating the capability statement, but making sure your business is actually found on the dynamic small business search, which is where you would go to upload all the certifications and backgrounds for your company to be found.
Great. So if I'm a company, I'm ready to get started, how long does it typically take from the time I go to register on sam.gov to potentially being awarded my first contract?
I would say it depends. Like we were kind of mentioning a little bit back about that past performance piece. Some contracts require you to be in business for 3 to 5 years, providing a specific service. If you're just coming into business, then you might be excluded from that piece. So you would just need to build up more reputation locally and build momentum in that regard. But it also depends on the certifications that you're looking at getting. If there are any clearances that are necessary, it might take a little bit more time, but typically about 6 months is what a business is looking at before they're procurement ready.
So before submitting a proposal, does a small business need to have clearances or other credentials in place prior to submission?
Well, as mentioned, it depends on the contract. There are set aside specific to certification. So there is woman-owned small business set aside service disabled vets. If those are the contracts that you're going after, then you would for sure need to have those certifications in place. If you're doing specific construction projects, is what's coming to mind. Certain bases, if you're doing that project on a base, would require you to have clearance or guidance for your accessibility there. So it would depend on what you're going after, but of course we can review that together.
Great. And what's one thing you wish more businesses knew before starting this process?
You have to read the contract, the whole contract. I'm sorry, I don't want to go on a rant, but of course we will go over the opportunity with you. But if you would just take a second and just look through the scope of work to see if it is a specific service that you provide presently, not necessarily a like to provide, because there is an opportunity, but no have a past performance with providing top of the line service. I would just wish we would just go through the solicitation a little bit more. before sending it over to me, and then I would, go over it with you to see if it is for you. Qualify that solicitation of the opportunity.
I think another thing that we could say about that is that sometimes businesses they try to get into the deep end of the pool before they know how to do a dog paddle, right?
Huh.
And so you always have to look at it this way. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. I can't remember which philosopher said that, but it's a wonderful phrase that I use all the time.
I
You've
thought
got
it
to
was
start.
Lion King.
Yeah, you've got to
It
start.
was.
It could have been. You've got to start small, and you got to work your way up. And there are ways that you could start smaller. Looking. A lot of people think, well, I'm just going to have to go and be a prime contractor right away. But you could be a subcontractor. That'll help you build the resume. You could look to partner with another company. Again, if you have some gaps in the information or the types of services or the types of products. If there's something that you can't perform, partnering with another contractor that can perform that can sometimes be very beneficial, because again, it gives you the better opportunity to win the contract when you combine, and two companies are better than one, four companies are better than two.
It makes for a stronger proposal as well if you're going through it with the joint venture. Exactly like Rick said, you have the opportunity to learn, strategize, network, and earn.
Fantastic. All right. Well, listen, big thanks to Jay Davis for dropping some serious knowledge on us today. So, Jay, again, we greatly appreciate you joining and doing this, and we look forward to you helping the businesses in your local area. We at Move America look forward to helping businesses throughout the country. And remember, it's all about government contracting isn't just for the big guys. So you've got resources available. You've got people who can help you open the doors. You've got people who can help you walk through the door and, decide whether or not you want to buy the house or you just want to come in for the open house and have a warm cookie with the realtor because the cookies are good. Uh, it's all about
Exactly
that. But
that. Exactly that. About 51% of payroll in the United States is for micro enterprises. That is businesses that have between 1 and 10 employees. It's 50% of payroll in the United States. So exactly like Rick said, government contracting is for you, and we're happy to walk you through that process.
another piece of knowledge you dropped on us, man. You've given me a lot today. We really appreciate that, Jay. Thanks again. And again, let's give people your number, and we'll go ahead and make sure that we put it in the chat and send it out. But how do people get a hold of you?
Absolutely. So my email is there on the screen, jdavis@moveamerica.org. Of course, you can go ahead and give me a quick call directly at 313-452-6960.
Excellent. So again, thank you to Jay for putting all this information together today. Thank you so much to Meg for making sense of it all. We really do appreciate that. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. Remember, we hold these webinars monthly, so we want to see you here at our next one. It's going to be a good one. Look for the announcement on that. Make sure that you are following us on LinkedIn. You could find us at moveamerica-org. And you can also follow our Move America Apex Accelerator. That's Dearborn Apex, I believe it. I think it's at Dearborn Apex. So be sure to follow us on LinkedIn. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, we got it. So we got to change that too. I'm sorry, just thinking out loud.
Yeah, no, that's all right. It's all good. But yes, we're going to make sure that we want to have you follow us there, and we will make sure that again people get the slides. We're going to make the recording available. That's all going to be coming up very soon. And again, we've got a lot of great stuff coming down the pike. Move America produces a podcast, so be on the lookout for that. We've got episodes dropping every couple of weeks. We're putting out newsletters. We're putting out all kinds of great information. We're here to help you. It's all about these pathways to partnership, and we want to make sure that we're giving you the best pathway possible. So again, thanks to Jay, thanks to Meg, thanks to everybody on the Move America team who's helped us out, and thanks to all of you for joining us. We appreciate your time today. We wish you the absolute best of success in your government contracting journey, and we will talk to you again very soon.